I think what the ladies of last year who had the best sex in the evening may not be here in the morning. And the other ones who are here in the morning may not be morning sex people. And anyway, hello everybody. Thank you for giving me the honor to speak here with you now, and then for those of you who will choose and continue with me in the workshop that follows. I work as a clinician primarily with couples that are young and old, married and not, in their first marriages or subsequent ones. And there were a number of questions and realities that I would see in front of me that went against what I had always been told. One was sexual problems are always the consequence of relational problems. And if they fix the relationship, the sex will follow. And my experience over the 25 years was that very often the relationship would indeed improve dramatically, but it didn't necessarily change much in the bedroom. And that maybe the rules of the kitchen and the rules of the bedroom are not one and the same nor interchangeable. That began a process of thinking for me in which I wanted to explore the nature of erotic desire in long-term relationships. This is the first time in the history of humankind that we are supposed to be having sex over the long run. We live twice as long only because we feel like it. Not because it's a female marital duty exclusively, and not because we want 14 children for which we need to have 16 so that maybe 12 will stay alive. Only because it is rooted in desire. And so what happened to this generation that has often contraception in their hand and premarital sex, accepted or not, but certainly the meaning of sexuality as a connecting force and not just as a reproductive force, as part of the narrative of their relationship, believes in the romantic ideal, which involved the sexualization of love and the connection between marital happiness and sexual satisfaction. And what happens to this generation that seems to want desire and doesn't have it, or at least not for each other? That's the Appalachian Trail. So I wanted to understand what are the fears and obstacles that stand in our way when our pursuit of safety and stability clashes with our equally strong need for passion and excitement. And so my focus became looking at the erotic and the domestic. I had a few questions, and they went like this. Why is it that so often couples come to me saying, we love each other very much, we have no sex? It would have been no problem to write a book about people who can't stand each other and also do not want any intimate connection with each other, sexually. But the idea that sex may fade in couples who continue to love each other as much as ever brought me to question, then what is the dynamic between love and desire? The second one was, can we want what we already have? No, Bernard Shaw has this beautiful line that there are only two tragedies in life. One is not to get what you want, but the other is to get it. And why doesn't good intimacy guarantee good sex? Despite what we keep being told and taught, there seems to be sometimes a reverse-inverse correlation where growing intimacy sometimes stifles desire. That the more closely, intimately connected people actually become, the harder it is for them to make love to the person they love. And then why is it that sex makes babies and babies spell erotic disaster in couples? You know, it's the fatal blow. And then why is it that the forbidden is so erotic? Hence again the Appalachian Trail. There must be some other trails in this country too, no? You know. And then lastly, when you love, how does it feel? And when you desire, how is it different? So those are the questions I would like to briefly travel with you. And more importantly, what became very clear to me is that sexuality or working on sex isn't working on people having sex. It is really looking at it as a lens through which we can see our most entrenched beliefs and values and attitudes, and also our most acute wishes, hopes, and longings for something better. So when I talk about erotic intelligence, the difference is this. Animals have sex. It is the pivot in the geometry, this thing called sex. But only humans have eroticism. It is sexuality transformed by the human imagination. It is us who are able to make love in our head for 4 hours, have a wonderful time, and touch nobody. Because the central agent of the erotic act is our imagination. And sometimes the breakdown of desire is also a breakdown of the imagination. Not of positions, not of techniques, but of one's ability to bring meaning and aliveness in oneself and in one's life. So when I think about eroticism, I think of it way beyond the narrow sexual meaning that modernity has attributed to it. It is the mystical sense of the word, aliveness, vibrancy, vitality, energy. It is the erotic as an antidote to death. And the way that I began to think of that actually came through my work in the area of trauma, because I do pain and pleasure, and they often, of course, intimately connect. And what I noticed was this. I grew up in a community that was all trauma victims, concentration camp survivors, Holocaust survivors, who arrived to Belgium after World War II. And in that community, there were two groups, and you can apply this to any traumatized community. Those who didn't die, and those who came back to life. And the people who didn't die often lived very closely tethered to the ground, looking for some basic sense of security and safety, rarely able to trust again, and certainly not able to experience pleasure without a tremendous amount of guilt. The people who came back to life were the people who understood how to maintain a sense of aliveness and of vitality on the inside, how to have the erotic be an antidote to death. And when I would listen to the couples complain to me about the sexlessness or the listlessness, actually, of their sex lives, loving, open, caring relationships whose sexual lives are erotically dull or sometimes completely absent, they sometimes want more sex, but they always want better sex. And the better that they want is to reconnect with that sense of vitality, of renewal, of playfulness and connection that sex used to afford them. So that is what I work on when I work on sexuality, is people's ability to release themselves from the grip of their defenses and to be able to experience pleasure. And to experience pleasure and connection, one needs to have a basic sense of self-worth, which says, I am lovable, a basic sense of sexual self-esteem, which says, I am desirable, and then, therefore, an ability to communicate sexually and to be able to express one's wishes and likes and dislikes, and then to be able to have an engaged, intimate connection with the partner. Working on that healthy sense of entitlement. Why wouldn't I be able to want? Desire is the art of wanting. It's the owning of the wanting in the best sense, like any little child that you see that says, I want that one, not this one, that one. And you know that they have this unadulterated greed and knowledge that this is the candy that they want and not that candy. So I wanted to illustrate that point where a woman who gave it to me in very clear terms. And Adele starts like this. 80% of the time, I'm really happy with him. I really am. You know, he doesn't say certain things, he doesn't gush, but he's a really nice guy. I pick up the newspaper and I feel fortunate. We're healthy, we have enough money, our house has never caught on fire, we don't have to dodge the bullets on the way from home, from work to home. So what is it that I want? And I'm trying to figure this out. What is it I miss? You know, I look at my friend Mark. He's getting divorced for the second time because he says his wife doesn't inspire me. So I asked my husband, Alan, do I inspire you? And you know what he says? You inspire me to cook chicken every Sunday. He makes this fantastic coq au vin. And you know why? Because he wants to please me, because he knows I like it. So what it is I miss here? You know that fluttery feeling that you have the first year, that excitement, the butterflies in your stomach? I don't even know if I can get this anymore. And when I bring this up with Alan, he gets this face. Oh, and you want to talk about Brad and Jen again? I know how this works. I've studied biology. I know how the synapses go and how overuse lessens the reaction, but I want to experience some of that excitement. Now, the realistic part of me knows that the excitement of the beginning was there because of the insecurity in not quite knowing if he was going to be calling and how he felt about me. When we were dating and the phone rang, the reason it was exciting is because I really didn't know it would be him. Now, when he travels, I tell him, don't call me. I don't want to be woken up. The more intelligent part of me says, I don't want insecurity, I'm married, I have a kid, I don't want to have to worry every time he leaves the house. Does he like me? Doesn't he like me? Is he going to cheat on me? Is he not going to cheat on me? I don't want to have to do the tests that the magazines make you do. But I want to recapture some of that excitement. And by the end of a long day at work, taking care of Emilia and cooking a meal and cleaning up and catching things out of my list, the sex is the furthest thing of my mind. I don't even want to talk to anyone. Sometimes he watches TV and I go into the room and I'm actually really happy. So what is it I'm trying to put in words here? Because I'm not just talking about sex. I want to be appreciated as a woman, not as a mother, not as a wife, not as a companion. And I want to appreciate him as a man. It could be a gaze, a touch, a word. I want to be looked at without all that baggage. And he says, darling, it goes both ways. And he's right. It's not like I put up my negligee and go hubba hubba. I'm lazy in the make me feel special department too. When we first met, I brought him a briefcase for his birthday, something that he saw in a store, and it had 2 tickets to Paris in it. This year what we did? I gave him a DVD, then we celebrated it with a couple of friends by eating the meatloaf that his mother had made. I have nothing against meatloaf, but that's what it's come to. So why have I become so complacent? And it is that sense of deadness that I think creeps into people internally and also in between the two of them, that then begins to erode the sense of erotic aliveness and vitality, where people can easily begin to look at each other like Management Inc. and a list of functions and tasks that they need to provide, and have stopped for a moment and looked at each other and says, how are you? What's up with you? What's going on? That gaze. Anyway, in that breathless riff of her, I think that Adele captures vividly the tension between the comforts of committed love and the muting effect that it has on our erotic vitality. Because this familiarity is indeed reassuring, and none of us would like to do away with it. But at the same time, we would like to recapture some quality of excitement. And here is the dilemma. There are 2 forces. We have a strong need on the one side for security, for stability, for reliability, for predictability, all these anchoring, grounding experiences in our life. But we have an equally strong fundamental human need for novelty, for change, for adventure, for excitement, and even for risk. And these 2 fundamental human needs often come from different sources and flow in different directions. The challenge of the modern couple is to reconcile. For the first time in history, we want to experience lust in the bedroom, in the place where we are married. We want to bring the erotic and the domestic in one place. We want to experience with the same person that which makes us feel safe and that which brings predictability, and that which brings excitement, which is actually rooted in the unpredictable, no less. That is the fundamental contradiction, in some way, of reconciling the erotic and the domestic, or what we would call reconciling love and desire, or our need for freedom and our need for security. And you don't solve that with Victoria's Secret, and you don't solve that with candles, and there has not yet been a Victor's Secret store invented. Any one of you wants a new initiative? Lingerie should belong on both sides, if at all. So how do we go about, negotiating these 2 needs? What does it mean to be able to experience that tension? And how do we navigate that tension? And the image I invite you to have is the image of the little child. If all goes well, the little child sits on your lap, comfortably nested, cozy and secure. And at some point, he or she will want to jump off and go and see what is out there in the world. And when that kid goes out, if the adult that is here says, hey kiddo, the world's a great place, have a great time, there's so much to discover, I am here, then the little kid, after they've checked to see if the base is secure, turns back, goes further, and enjoys their sense of freedom, of autonomy, of independence, of discovery, while at the same time staying connected. And they are experiencing both desire and love, the wanting of the exploration and the security of the internal base. But if when that little kid turns around, there's an adult here that says, I'm lonely, I'm depressed, what's so great out there? Don't we have it so much better, you and I? Your father doesn't pay any attention to me. Your mother has already replaced me with the last 3 children. None of that needs to be said in words, but it conveys the message that is this: come back. I am not comfortable with your not being next to me. I need you to need me. Then the kid has a few options, but 3 of the main ones go like this. Either she comes right back, little Johnny comes right back and understands one thing: if I don't want to lose you, I will lose a part of me. And I will compromise my security or my freedom for your security. And I will learn to suppress that part of me. That person often will begin to experience love as something that is dear but also burdensome, mired at a level of responsibility and worry and caretaking that will make them later on nice, kind, loving partners, but people who are unable to make love to the person they love. Because in order to make love to the person you love, in order to be able to desire them while you care about them, you also need to be able to experience that sense of freedom and unself-consciousness. Otherwise, there is no sexual pleasure. The second kid doesn't want to come right back. They just go, but they have this zest, this energy, but they're constantly looking behind their shoulder. Are you there? You're not going to abandon me? You're not going to be angry with me when I come back? And those are often the people that in the beginning it was hot, no problem. Because in the beginning the distance was built in the structure of not yet knowing one another. And that is the story where the growing intimacy leads to the decreased sexual desire. When did it stop? When I moved in, when we got married, when we had a child. At every greater level of commitment and emotional involvement, they become more attached and less able to desire. The third kid often simply doesn't come back, and we know what happens there. So when I think about the dynamic between love and desire, there is one simple formula: fire needs air. And many times, people don't give each other enough space to maintain that air. So when you love, you want to contract the distance. You want to minimize the threat. You want to not experience any tension. But desire needs a certain space. It needs otherness. It needs a distance in order to be able to have an élan, a movement toward. So in the last 2-3 years, I've had the good fortune to travel to about 20 countries, and I've asked one question. And if I could see you, I would ask it to you, but we have no time. So I'll give you some of the responses I get. When do you find yourself most drawn to your partner? Not just sexually, most drawn. And I have asked this from Latin America to Turkey, to the Middle East, to Europe, a broad variety of religions, of cultures, and of gender structures. There is only one answer that is gender specific, and that is when the women say, when I see him playing with the kids. Rarely do men find women playing with the kids sexy. All the others are gender neutral, but they go like this. After we've been apart, I feel myself most drawn to my partner when she makes me laugh, when he surprises me, when we're away on vacation, after a fight, when we wake up, when he looks at me, when I take off his clothes, when she's doing something that she's passionate about, when I'm riding on the back of his motorcycle, when he's doing something in his own element, when he's in the garden, when he's fixing things, when she's painting, when he whispers in my ears, when I see her doing a talk on stage, when he helps me out, when he's being seductive, when we're at a party and I see how other people are looking at her or looking at him or see how he or she engages with others, when I'm slightly jealous, when he makes me laugh, when we're dancing, it goes on and on. But systematically, the description is not one when we are looking at each other 5 centimeters from each other, gazing into each other's eyes melded into one. You can't see your partner after a few years when they're that close. Neither is it when he or she is that far that you no longer can distinguish them either. It's this. It's when I look at my partner doing something in his element, or doing something she's passionate about, or when she surprises me, or when I look at her at a party, it's this comfortable distance where I look at this person as a separate unit who is momentarily, once again, somewhat mysterious and somewhat unknown. And in this space is the erotic elan. Of course, for that, I have to be comfortable with my partner being able to do these things where I experience the thriving relationship as promoting the other rather than preventing the other. In that space is something very clear. Sorry. There is no caretaking. Nobody is taking care of anybody in the realm of desire like that. There is not need, there is not he needs me and therefore I take care of him or her, because we can make love and accommodate and be very caring, and that is wonderful, but that is not the realm of desire. It's the fact that the other is an independent, separate person at that moment that allows me to want them. One of the biggest inhibitors to desire in couple is the dynamic around needing and the confusion between wanting and needing. So love flourishes in this atmosphere of closeness. But for some, love and desire are inseparable. And the more connected and the more secure and the more held they feel, the more they're able to release themselves, to be able to express themselves physically, sexually, sensually, affectionately, and so forth. But for others, they often are more disconnected, and the degree of which has to do with how do you love that prevents you to make love to the person you love. And how that happens is in the formation of our erotic blueprints, i.e., tell me how you were loved, and I'll tell you how you make love. I'll come back to that in a moment. There were a few other things that I questioned when thinking about the nature of erotic desire. One is this idea that passion fades. And it should fade in order to be replaced by something that is more realistic, more mature, more concrete. But you know, there are plenty of philosophies in the world that think that actually what we know is stable isn't necessarily so stable, that there is no certainty in life, and that maybe the best we can do is aspire to a kind of certainty and to security. But the moment you deeply love, you always are confronted with the fear of loss. And anyone who's had a child knows that. And so maybe passion goes hand in hand with the amount of uncertainty that we can tolerate. And it's not bad uncertainty. It's the uncertainty that maintains you up there, curious, interested in what's going to happen next. If we don't have that movement, but we sit like that, we may be really comfortable and cozy, but we will not necessarily experience the edge. Sorry. Okay, the next question I have is, why does parenthood, the transition to parenthood, so often become the demise of the erotic in couples? And we can talk about busy and tired and stressed, and all of these things are real. I live them, but I don't think that the truth lies there. I think that there are a number of very unique blocks that get created that transcend the more superficial reasons. And I'll give you just 2 or 3. The first one is that when we go to have children, we actually are shoring up the stability. We do away with the 6 cans. We clean the fridge up. We decide to eat better. We stop smoking. We decide to have a car with airbags. We need to begin to create protection. And often in the process of doing that, we put aside the unproductive, the reckless, the excessive, the erotic which is completely unproductive. It has no other purpose than the cultivation of pleasure for its own sake. You can't measure the erotic. You can measure sex, but you can't measure the erotic. And in a way, when family life thrives on routine and predictability and consistency, it is actually what is the opposite of what the erotic thrives on. So what eroticism pursues is what family life defends against, number one. Hence, reconciling the erotic and the domestic, it's never going to be a problem that we solve, but a paradox that we manage. And we'll manage it in part by helping people create an erotic space. An erotic space is not planning for sex. Sex may happen, but it's a space where I meet you not as the mother of our children or the spouse or the management inc. responsible citizens, but we meet as two people who still have a keen pleasure in being with each other for no other purpose, and maybe sex will happen. Second thing that happens today is the unprecedented child centrality in the history of the West, by which we have become a 24/7 enterprise that is meant to make sure that our children miss nothing, because we rarely at this point get work from them, we get meaning. And in the culture of sentimental idealization of children, a certain hierarchical shift has taken place by which the couple is left gasping. And we meet more than ever generations of couples who have a hard time putting a key on their bedroom door or feeling entitled to go out as a couple of adults without continuously feeling that it deprives the child. And my sentence there often will be, on the long list of what your children need, parents who have a good erotic connection should feature as one of them. Because if you don't, it is likely that you may become that parent who then doesn't let the child leave and experience their freedom because you need them to be your emotional caretaker because you're lonely at home, who then will be the next generation of partners who won't be able to make love to the person they love. And the third thing is that very often, because of the intense, powerfully erotic connection that mothers and frontline parents, I would say, may have, or have actually, with their child, when I listen to the description of the tickling, the nibbling, the licking, the adoring gaze, it is sometimes not much different from the description of the people who spent 3 nights in the hotel at the beginning. And so when a person says, at the end of the day, I have nothing left to give, I also sometimes think, at the end of the day, there may be nothing more you need. And that is true and ought to be like that probably for a good 18 months, not 6 weeks. But at some point, the erotic energy has got to come back to the couple. People say, sex with kids, you must be kidding. And I say, let's not talk sex, let's talk erotic energy. Playfulness, I see you playing with the children all the time. Novelty, you're looking for activities and new things to do all the time. They're walking around in the most beautiful clothes. You're walking around in your colored sweatpants, we forgot the original color. You get to go to the same restaurant every week. They get languorous hugs, and you try to survive on a diet of quick pecks. The erotic energy, mystery, playfulness, novelty, anticipation, excitement, they are alive and well, but it is eros redirected. And at some point, we work at getting the couples to bring that energy back. So I want to read to you a quote that I found, which I thought was so telling, and you will tell me who you think it is. If you look deep into her eyes, there's a certain vulnerability. In any case, I see it even if most don't realize it. She goes through life tall, beautiful, confident, very able. There's a part of her that is fragile, young, sometimes scared, and I think these are contradictions that attracted me to her. And she makes me very happy. She's very familiar to me, and so I can be myself around her. She knows me well. I completely trust her, and at the same time, in a certain respect, she remains a mystery to me. Sometimes when we're lying together, I look at her and I feel dizzy with the realization that there is another distinct person from me who has memories, origins, thoughts, feelings that are different from my own. That tension between familiarity and mystery meshes something strong between us. Even if one builds a life together based on trust, attentiveness, and mutual support, I think that it's important that a partner continues to surprise. Who do you think it is? President Obama in 1997 in an interview to the French newspaper Le Monde. Thank you.